Hi, this is Alex from PHP Academy, and in this video we're going to be looking at the access denied error when trying to connect to a MySQL server. Now, the essential part of connecting obviously to a database and then selecting information from tables is actually first of all connecting to the MySQL server. Now, I'm using XAMPP on a Windows machine, so I would already have this installed. I've already got my MySQL installed. So either way, if you're installing MySQL manually or you are getting it as part of a web server package such as XAMPP, then you will obviously need to connect to your database at some point if you're using databases and database tables to store data. So in this case, to initially connect to a database, we would use the MySQL connect function. Now inside here, this would typically take three parameters. The first one being the server name, the second being the username that you're connecting with, and the third one being the password of the user that you're connecting with. So in this case, and almost all cases, you would use localhost because the script would be on the server that you're trying to connect to, so the MySQL server would be on the same machine. So I'm connecting using localhost. Now if I try and connect with a username that is either not found or a username and password combination that do not match, I'll have this access denied error returned. So the first thing I'm going to go ahead and do is use MySQL Connect with the username root and the password as nothing. Now in this case, when I go ahead and refresh my browser, you'll see that we don't have any error appear. Now I have error reporting in php.ini, in my php.ini file, set to eAll. So essentially what this would do is it would return this error anyway. So I can now assume that I have connected successfully to my database. And if we take a look in phpMyAdmin, we can actually take a look at the list of privileges and usernames that are available to us, or users that are available. So I've just gone and clicked on the privileges tab in phpMyAdmin, and you can see here that we've got the users, the host that these users are based on, and the password. Now in this case I'm using root, and this is on 127.0.0.1 and localhost. So I'm connecting successfully to localhost with the username root and with no password. So what happens if I go ahead and I specify another user that doesn't exist, for example Alex? When I do actually go ahead and refresh my page, you see that we have this access denied for user Alex, and that's at localhost because that's the server that we've defined, and it says here using password no. Now if you were to go ahead and connect using a user that did have a password and you didn't actually supply a password, it would obviously say using password no, but the problem there would be that you are not supplying a password when you have to. So let's go ahead and change this back to root, and I'm going to go ahead and supply a password. So I'm just going to type in password here. Now in this case I'm supplying a password when the password in here is nothing. We don't have a password set on this user. So now when I go ahead and refresh, it says access denied for user root at localhost using password yes. So although I've supplied a password, it obviously doesn't match the null value that's stored in the MySQL permissions list or privileges list. So in this case you can go ahead with phpMyAdmin and quite easily add a new user. Obviously if you're uploading PHP files that are accessing a database on a remote server, so for example web hosting that you might use, you'll need to be careful with this because different usernames look different well, on different servers. So for example, let's just go ahead and get rid of this. Let's just say you had hosting and your username to log into your cPanel, for example, if you had cPanel available, was, for example, my website. You may need to define your username as my website underscore root, and then obviously go ahead and just define the password that you've set. So there are a lot of other or a lot of alternative ways that usernames are created and how they look, and obviously it's up to you to set your own password. Working on a local server, it doesn't really matter if we don't have a password, as long as you're not allowing people externally to access your server. So in this case, with root and no password, I've connected successfully. However, if you do get the access denied error, it's simply a case that your username and password do not match, or you're using a user that doesn't exist, or you're not using a password at all. Hi, this is Alex from PHP Academy, and in this video we're going to be looking at the cannot modify header information error that you may be returned with if you're using header redirects. Now let's take a look at this blank page at the moment. What I'm going to do is I'm going to just literally start some PHP tags and go ahead and use header and redirect to another page. So I'm going to say header, and then I'm going to say location. Let's just say google.co.uk. Okay, so what's going to happen here is this header function is going to redirect us to the web page google.co.uk. Let's go ahead and refresh the page in our browser, and you can see that we're redirected instantly to google.co.uk. Now, you may not be using header to redirect to a web page as such. You may be using it to redirect in some kind of way in your code to another page on your web server. So for example, when the user registers, you might want to locate them to another page. Now in this case, if we had any kind of output, HTML output before our header, we'll return this cannot modify header information error. So for example, if I created some h1 tags, so a header tag, and then just typed in redirection, if I use this header here, we're not actually going to retrieve the same or receive the same result. So let's go ahead and click back in our browser and press enter and refresh. You can see that we've got the header that we specified just a moment ago, but we actually have this error warning, cannot modify header information, headers already sent by blah blah blah, and where the output actually started, and that's index.php and line 3. On line 4. So essentially what we have here is something that's not working because we have HTML output or any output before this header command. Now there's a simple way to fix this, and this is to use output buffering. So before any HTML output on your page, you may have a full HTML template, and you will have like obviously the HTML tag, the body tag, titles, meta information, you know, just things like that, and the doc type, etc. So before any HTML output on your page, you can either go ahead and include a overall initialization file. So for example, include init.php, and init.php might just contain your database connections, things like that. But for the purpose of this tutorial, I'm just going to be using a single page, so I'm just going to create some PHP tags up here. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the ob_start function, which is going to turn output buffering on. And what this roughly does, I'm just going to roughly explain what it does, I'm not going to go into too much detail, but any output on the page, it will store it in a buffer as opposed to rendering it immediately. And this means that we can then go ahead and modify the header information with this header function, which will obviously just redirect us. There's a variety of other things you can do with the header function. It's not just made to redirect. So we've turned on output buffering up here. We can then go ahead and underneath turn output buffering on, so ob_end_flush, and that will just turn output buffering off at the end of your script. It's not required, but it's probably good practice to do so. So now that we've done this, we have our HTML output, but what's going to happen is the data is going to be stored inside of a buffer, and it's going to let us use this header function here. So let's go ahead and refresh the page and see the result that we get. So when I refresh now, you can see that we've been redirected to google.co.uk with no problem whatsoever, just by using this ob_start here. Now, like I mentioned earlier, you don't have to use ob_end_flush, it won't make a difference. If we were to go back and refresh, you can see that it still works, so that's not a problem. But we've simply solved this really common error just by using the ob_start function.